Hi, my name is Sandy Tribe. I've been a 14-year docent with the Placer County Museums. But it's a total restoration. The whole ground floor is museum. Second and third floors are courtrooms, and actually fourth floor is a courtroom too. Did you come through this room here? Did you see our collection of gold? Did you see the gold?
Yeah.
Okay, and that was where the treasurer's office. Lights, got candles, no air conditioning, no running water. Well, so prior to 1905, if women were accused of a crime, they were put up at the hotel in town with 3 hot meals a day, comfortable accommodations. So that would have been from about 1850 until 1905. So 1848, gold was found in Auburn and the miners started coming into the area. The accommodations, there were no hotels, there were no streets. The men came and they had to build their own. They lived in tents, very, very crude existence. But over time, by about 4 years after that time, we did actually have a town full of homes and businesses. But prior to that, it was a very rough and tumble, primitive mining camp. And one of the things they did to gamble, well, they would place a bet on anything. But across the way, through the trees here, you see those apartments. On top of that hill, that was the Bull and Bear Hill. And what they staged there was a very simple concept. You go out and catch a bear, you go out and have a bull, and you put them in a corral together, and then you start placing your bets. Who's going to win? How long is the fight going to take? And that was the bull and bear fights, and the animals fought to the death. Granite that built the building is from Rockland, quarries in Rockland. The bricks were made at the Gladding McBean factory in Lincoln. All the decorative work, the pillars, all the gargoyles and decorative items, the architectural decorative items were made at Gladding McBean. The rotunda, the top dome, is made out of copper. Hard to see from this angle. So this courthouse, built in 1898, most of the courthouses in California, and there were 58 county courthouses because there are 58 counties in the state of California, were built in this Capitol style. They call this, when it's got a big dome in the center, the Capitol style. They stacked logs on top because there were so many coyotes and bears in the area, they would tear it up. So they had to bury someone and then stack all kinds of heavy things on top to keep the animals out. By about 1860, we did have a designated cemetery. Everything was built out of wood. And it gets very hot and very dry in this part of the country, and fires were very common. So after the fire, when they rebuilt, they started using more of the brick and the metal doors, as well as this building over here, in hope that it would retard any fires that would start. So those buildings really became much more permanent. Of course, it didn't stop all the fires, but some buildings would stay. Fires would. The middle building, 1855, became our county hospital. The county hospital had 8 beds, and the physician and his family, this building right here in the middle, the patients were on the first floor, and the physician and his family lived on the second floor. It was was like a shopping mall of town. It was full of all the businesses, and it still is today. The freeway, that's Interstate 80. That was completed through Auburn in the year about 1960s, and it destroyed and took with it 1/3 of our historic district. These streets used to continue right over to the other side of the hill. Had a lot of old homes and a lot of old business buildings there. It's taken out by the building of the freeway. This was the first county bank. This is the Placer County Bank. And in 1904, we had a really scandalous robbery that occurred. It was written up in the newspapers, in the London Times, and the New York papers, and all over this country. We had a resident San Francisco reporter here to take the daily news. What had happened was, in 1904, someone came in here, all disguised, with a mask on and a hat, and he robbed the bank. He had his horse tied up over here. He ran out of the bank, picked up his horse, rode out of town. The sheriff formed a posse to see if they could find the robber, and they didn't find anything. They didn't find him, they didn't find any evidence, they didn't find any money. So it became an unsolved crime. Till about 6 months later, there was a big fire on the hill back here. And it was a beautiful home owned by the Weber family. And inside the home, Mr. and Mrs. Weber had both died, as well as their teenage daughter and their 10-year-old son. The person out of this family who was missing, his name was Adolf Weber, 19 years old. Nobody knew where Adolf was, but he did show up. The coroner had reviewed the bodies and found out that they had been shot. The two children, the mom and dad, had been shot before the house was set afire. The investigators put one and one together and came up with Adolf was a suspect in this robbery. As they were looking for evidence around the remains of the Weber home, they saw a money bag that had been buried in front of the barn. They picked it up, and it was the Placer County Bank money bag. Some of the money had been spent. So now Adolf becomes a prime suspect in the bank robbery as well as the murder of his parents. So this was a very scandalous trial. Something like this just didn't happen in California. Well, probably anywhere in the United States, but this was a big deal. So he was put on trial. He was found guilty, and he was taken to Folsom State Prison, and he was hanged to death. The big statue that you see driving down Interstate 80 this time of year has a Santa Claus hat on it, but that's Claude Chan, who was a French immigrant here. He actually started his work life here in California working for Captain John Sutter, building wine barrels. He was working for John Sutter when he heard the rumor that gold was being found on the American River. He put a group of about 30 people together, and he was coming through Auburn. He camped overnight at Auburn, and lo and behold, he was the first man to find gold in the Auburn Ravine in Auburn. So 1860s, this country decided they wanted the Transcontinental Railroad, a railroad from the East Coast to the West Coast. We were very lucky. It was going to be routed through Auburn. And that is the original, well, this is a branch of the original Transcontinental Railroad. But the majority of workers on the railroad came from China. Our railroad could not have been built without the labor of the Chinese at that time. Originally, Irish people were brought over and contracted, brought out here, and the owners of the railroad felt they were a very unreliable labor source. That every time it was payday, they got drunk, you wouldn't see them for 3 days. So one of the chief men building the railroad said, I think we should explore bringing Chinese laborers over. The other partner says, why? Why would you want to do that? And he said, because they built the Great Wall of China, didn't they? So So they started getting contract labor over, and they built the railroad through the those treacherous parts, which is through the Sierra Nevada mountains. So we had stagecoach traffic, and the stagecoach came down that street from Sacramento right through here, pulled right up in front of this old building here. Called the American Hotel. The first floor is the California Stagecoach Company. You get out of the stagecoach and either take a room for the night at the hotel. There were several hotels in town. The horses would be taken care of at the Empire Livery Stable. If you wanted to rent a horse, like you rent a car today, you could rent a horse for the day or the week or buy the horse. But also the stagecoach companies. We had 3 stagecoach companies in town that their horses were fed and housed over here. Where the Chinese had opium dens, prostitution, and gambling halls. And it went for about a block up. It's on the side of a hill, so there's another level of bedrooms also. And then there was a communal kitchen.